Der Feind wird nicht durchhalten. Sehen Sie diese Vorteil. Ich will keine Ausreden hören. Der Milchig ist an. Der Feind wird vernichtet. Wir greifen sofort an. Keine Verzerrung mehr. Das ist ein Fehl.
August 1st, 1944. Wolfschanze, the Wolf's Lair. Deep in the forests of East Prussia, Adolf Hitler sits at his breakfast table, reviewing intelligence reports from France. The room is quiet except for the rustling of papers. He marks defensive positions on a large map of Normandy with a red pencil. Outside, rain taps against the concrete bunker walls. The door opens. General Alfred Jodl, Chief of the Operations Staff of the Armed Forces High Command, walks in carrying a folder. His face has lost its color. Hitler looks up. Mein Führer, Jodl says, his voice carefully controlled. I have the morning position report from OB West. Hitler sets down his pencil. And? Jodl places the folder on the table. Patton's Third Army. They're at Avranches. Hitler's hand stops mid-reach for his coffee cup. Avranches? That's. He stands, moving to the map. His finger traces from the Normandy beachhead to Avranches. That's 60 miles from their last reported position.
We attack now! Crush them! Advance on all the fronts! Your hesitation is shows obey brain! The enemy is weak! We must strike now with force! No delays! Push forward immediately! That is an order!
Yes, mein Führer. When was their last position confirmed? Yesterday morning. 48 hours ago. Hitler stares at the map. The distance. The terrain. The roads that should be clogged with refugees and destroyed by retreating German forces. That's impossible, he says quietly. An entire army, 60 miles, in 2 days. Jodl says nothing. Hitler looks at him. Multiple sources confirm this? Yes, mein Führer. Luftwaffe reconnaissance. Ground reports from 7th Army. Radio intercepts. Patton's Third Army is operational as of this morning, and his lead armored elements are already through Avranches. Hitler returns to the map. He measures the distance again with his fingers, as if the act of measuring might change the reality. Apparently not impossible, he finally says. And that was just the first 48 hours. Before we go further, if you're fascinated by untold stories from the Second World War, stories that reveal the moments that changed everything, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button for WWII Elite Glory. Drop a like on this video, and leave a comment telling me which general you think was the greatest tactical mind of the war. Your support keeps these stories alive. Now, let's talk about what happened next. Hitler doesn't believe in coincidences. He doesn't believe in luck. He believes in doctrine, in planning, in the superiority of German military science. And what Jodl just told him violates every principle of mobile warfare that Hitler himself championed. Let's put this in perspective. In 1940, when the Wehrmacht launched Fall-Gelb, the invasion of France, the German army averaged 15 to 20 miles per day. That was considered extraordinary. That was Blitzkrieg. Lightning War, the speed that shocked the world. Patton's Third Army, in those first 48 hours, moved at 30 miles per day, through enemy territory, against prepared German defensive positions. With supply lines stretching back to the beaches of Normandy, Hitler picks up the intelligence report.
Angriffsabschnitt! Vor uns der Fenster! Jawohl, mein Führer! Ja, in der Linie!
He reads it slowly, his lips moving slightly as he processes each detail. 4th Armored Division, 6th Armored Division, 8th Corps. 15th Corps, names that will soon become synonymous with speed. How many tanks does he have? Hitler asks. Jodl consults his notes. Estimates suggest 4 armored divisions operational, approximately 600 tanks in the lead elements. Fuel consumption? Our analysts estimate he's using 400,000 gallons per day, possibly more. Hitler looks up sharply. 400,000? That's more than our entire Army Group West was allocated during the invasion. He sets the report down. Where is he getting it? We believe he's capturing our supply depots, mein Führer. The room goes quiet. Hitler stares at Jodl. He's living off our supplies? It appears so. Hitler turns back to the map. His finger traces the roads from Avranches deeper into France, toward Paris, toward the German border. This is one American army, he says, almost to himself. One general. And he's simply driving through France as if we're not even there. Mein Führer, Field Marshal von Klug has assured us that, get von Klug on the telephone, now. August 3rd, 1944, 2 days later, Hitler's voice echoes through the secure telephone line to France. On the other end, Field Marshal Gunther von Klug, Commander-in-Chief West, listens. Von Klug. Your latest report says Patton's forces are now at Dina. That's another 40 miles. In one day. Von Klug's voice is tight. Yes, mein Führer. We attempted to establish blocking positions at Pontaubal, but his columns bypassed them during the night. You have the 2nd SS Panzer Division, the 116th Panzer Division. Where are they? Reapers, but Patton's columns don't stop. They're moving at night, refueling from captured German depots. His reconnaissance elements probe our defenses, find the gaps, and his armor pours through before we can react. Hitler's grip on the telephone tightens. Then destroy the depots, crater the roads. We have, mein Führer, every bridge across the Selou River was demolished. His engineers had portable bridges across it in under 6 hours. His columns didn't even slow down. Hitler closes his eyes. This is one American army, von Klug, not their entire force. One general. And you're telling me he's simply driving through France? There's a pause on the line. When von Klug speaks again, his voice is quiet. That is an accurate assessment, mein Führer. Then stop him. I don't care how. Deploy every available panzer division. Concentrate your forces. Cut his supply lines. Do you understand me? Jawohl, mein Führer. I want Patton stopped. Not tomorrow. Not next week. Now, it will be done, mein Führer. Hitler slams the receiver. Jodl, standing nearby, says nothing. He's learned when silence is the only safe response. But here's what Hitler didn't know yet. Patton was about to do something even the German High Command thought was suicidal. August 7th, 1944, Hitler orders Operation Lüttich, a counterattack at Mortain. The plan is elegant in its simplicity. 4 panzer divisions will attack westward, cut through the American lines, and sever Patton's supply routes. Trap him deep in France with no fuel, no ammunition, no way home. Nearly 400 tanks. The 2nd SS Panzer Division, Das Reich. The 1st SS Panzer Division, Leibstandarte. The 2nd and 116th Panzer Divisions. Hitler is committing his armored reserve in France to destroy Patton. The attack launches before dawn. German tanks roll westward through the French countryside. The initial reports are promising. American positions overrun, territory recaptured. But there's a problem. By the time the German armor reaches the roads they expect to be clogged with American supply trucks, they find them empty. Patton's main body isn't behind his spearheads. It's beside them. He's moved Third Army's entire center of gravity 80 miles east, while Hitler was planning the counterattack. At OKW headquarters, the operations staff tries to make sense of the intelligence reports. Where is Patton's center of gravity? One analyst writes in a report that will be captured after the war. The answer, it turns out, is nowhere and everywhere. Traditional military doctrine says an army has a center of gravity, a Schwerpunkt, a point where the commander concentrates his forces for maximum effect. Patton doesn't have one. His 4 corps are advancing on separate axes, each one probing, each one exploiting success, each one covering 30 miles a day. The German counterattack at Mortain hits empty roads. By August 10th, it's collapsing under Allied air attacks. And Patton? He's another 70 miles deeper into France. His 4th Armored Division is at Le Mans. His 15th Corps is approaching Argenton. Hitler receives the reports in silence. Then he makes a decision that will haunt German military planning for the rest of the war. He orders Army Group West to hold their positions, refuse to retreat, defend every mile. It's exactly what Patton wants. August 12, 1944. Field Marshal Walter Model arrives in France to replace von Klug. Model is a defensive specialist, known for his ability to stabilize collapsing fronts. Hitler calls him the Führer's fireman. If anyone can stop Patton, it's Model. Model's first briefing lasts 4 hours. By the end, he understands the magnitude of the problem. He immediately contacts Hitler. Mein Führer, Model says carefully. I've reviewed the intelligence reports. Patton's 4th and 6th Armored Divisions are at Argentan and Chartres. That's 140 miles from their start point on August 1st. I'm aware, Hitler says. At this rate, mein Führer, Patton will reach the German border before we can establish a coherent defensive line. Hitler's response is recorded by the stenographer present. Then he must be stopped now. Not tomorrow, now. Model chooses his next words carefully. Mein Führer, with respect. To stop Patton, we must be allowed to retreat. Pull back to defensible lines. Make him extend his supply routes until they break. Retreat is not an option. Mein Führer, every meter of French soil has been paid for in German blood. We will not simply hand it back to the Americans because one cowboy general drives fast. You will stop him. Do you understand? Model understands. He also understands that Hitler has just made stopping Patton impossible. And that's when intelligence brought Hitler a report that would make him question whether Patton was even human. August 19, 1944. The Falaise Pocket. 50,000 German troops from 7th Army are trapped in a shrinking perimeter. British and Canadian forces press from the north, American forces from the south. The pocket is closing. German commanders order a breakout. Retreat east. Get out before the trap shuts completely. It's their only chance. But when the German columns start moving, they discover something that shouldn't be possible. Patton's tanks are already in their rear, already cutting off their escape routes, already blocking roads they expected to be clear. One German commander reports, American armor appears in positions we had not anticipated. They move faster than our intelligence estimates, faster than our own forces can withdraw. Over the next 3 days, the German 7th Army is destroyed. 50,000 men captured. Thousands of vehicles abandoned. An entire army group effectively eliminated from the order of battle. Wehrmacht Chief of Staff Heinz Guderian, the man who literally wrote the book on panzer tactics, writes in his diary, "This Patton understands blitzkrieg better than we do." Coming from Guderian, that's not analysis. It's surrender. But Hitler still doesn't understand what he's facing. He thinks Patton is a tactical problem, a logistical problem, something that can be solved with more tanks, more... He's wrong. Patton isn't a tactical problem. He's a philosophical one. He's fighting a kind of war the Germans thought they had mastered, and he's doing it better than they ever did. August 25, 1944. OKW intelligence receives 5 separate reports of Patton sightings. Fontainebleau, Troyes, Orléans, Reims, Chalon. 5 different locations, some of them over 100 miles apart. The intelligence analysts are confused. Is Patton dividing his command? Is he using body doubles? Are the reports simply wrong? None of the above. Patton is advancing on 4 separate axes simultaneously. 8th Corps toward Brest, 12th Corps toward Orléans, 15th Corps toward Troyes, 20th Corps toward Reims. No centralized front, no main effort, just speed. Just advance. Just exploit every opening and never stop moving. It's like fighting a ghost. August 27th. Jodl briefs Hitler on the latest intelligence. Mein Führer, we have 5 confirmed sighting reports of Patton's headquarters. It appears he's divided his command into independent task forces, each operating with significant autonomy. Hitler stares at the map. Red arrows showing American advances cover half of France now. Where is his supply line? That's the issue, Mein Führer. He doesn't appear to have one. Not in the traditional sense. What does that mean? Jodl takes a breath. He's capturing our supplies. Fuel, ammunition, rack. His units are living off our depots. When they run low, they simply capture the next one. Hitler is quiet for a long moment. This man fights like a barbarian, he finally says. No logistics, no doctrine, no caution, just speed. Yes, Mein Führer. How far has he advanced since August 1st? Jodl consults his notes. As of this morning, elements of 3rd Army are 400 miles from their start point. 400 miles. In 26 days, Hitler does the math in his head. 15 miles per day. Sustained. Through combat. Through terrain. Through everything the Wehrmacht has thrown at him. What were our projections for an American advance from Normandy to the German border? 3 months, assuming favorable conditions. Hitler looks at the map again, at the red arrows pushing east. He's going to do it in 5 weeks, isn't he? Jodl doesn't answer. He doesn't need to. What happened next would force Hitler to make a decision that would doom an entire army group. But first let's talk about what was happening on the American side. Because while Hitler was trying to understand Patton, Patton was dealing with his own challenges. And the biggest challenge wasn't the Germans. It was his own high command. Supreme Allied Commander Eisenhower was cautious. He believed in consolidated advances, secure supply lines, coordinated operations. Patton believed in speed. He believed that a moving army was harder to hit than a stationary one. He believed that the best defense was to be somewhere the enemy didn't expect. By late August, Patton's advance had outrun his supply lines. His tanks were running on fumes. His supply officers were performing miracles just to keep the advance moving, and Eisenhower was getting nervous. On August 29th, Eisenhower ordered Patton to slow down, consolidate positions, let the supply lines catch up. Patton's response, recorded in his diary, was unprintable, but he obeyed. Mostly. He slowed his advance from 30 miles a day to 20. He consolidated some positions, and he kept pushing east. Because Patton understood something that Hitler was only beginning to grasp. This wasn't about tactics. This was about tempo, about keeping the enemy off balance, about never giving them time to establish a coherent defense. By August 31st, exactly 30 days after Third Army became operational, Patton had advanced 400 miles, liberated 47,000 square miles of French territory, and captured 65,000 German prisoners. His army had consumed 1.4 million gallons of fuel, fired millions of rounds of ammunition, worn out thousands of vehicles, and done what German intelligence had calculated would take 3 months. General Blumentritt, Chief of Staff for OB West, would later say in a post-war interrogation, "We didn't know where Patton was. We only knew where he had been. By the time our intelligence located him, he'd moved again. It was like fighting a ghost." September 2nd, 1944. Hitler's afternoon briefing at the Wolf's Lair. Intelligence Chief General Reinhard Gehlen spreads new maps across the table. The red arrows showing American positions have reached the eastern edge of France. Hitler stares at the maps in silence. "Gehlen," he finally says, "this map shows Patton at Verdun." "Ja, mein Führer. He crossed the Meuse yesterday. Elements of his 12th Corps are probing the Moselle River defenses." Hitler's finger traces the Moselle on the map, the river that forms part of the natural border between France and Germany. "The frontier, the Moselle," he says quietly. "He's at the German frontier." "Ja, mein Führer." Hitler is still for a moment. "How long has it been since Normandy?" 5 weeks, mein Führer. Third Army became operational on August 1st. 32 days ago. Hitler sits down slowly. His eyes never leave the map. 5 weeks, he says, almost to himself. He crossed all of France in 5 weeks. Jodl starts to speak. "Mein Führer, we must reinforce the west wall defenses before..." Hitler holds up his hand. Jodl stops. The room is quiet except for the sound of rain on the windows. "Do you understand what this means?" Hitler asks. He's not looking at anyone. He's looking at the map, at the distance, at the impossible speed of it. In 1940, we conquered France in 6 weeks. We had the entire Wehrmacht, the Luftwaffe at full strength. The element of surprise. The best generals in the world. Gehlen says carefully, "Mein Führer." Hitler looks up. His eyes are cold. This Patton. He took it back in 5, with one army going the hard direction, against our defenses. His finger rests on Verdun, the city where German advances bled to death in 1916. The fortress that became a symbol of French resistance. And Patton just drove past it like it wasn't even there. "Who is this man?" Hitler asks quietly. No one answers. Because there is no answer. Not one that makes sense to men who were trained in the German general staff tradition, who believed in methodical planning and overwhelming force and the superiority of German military science. Patton isn't fighting by those rules. He's writing new ones. And he's winning. This moment, recorded by multiple sources present at the briefing, reveals something profound. Hitler, who built his entire reputation on speed and audacity and the principle of the offensive, is watching an American general exceed every standard he set. Patton has done in 32 days what the Wehrmacht needed 46 days to do in 1940. And Patton did it going uphill, against prepared defenses, into enemy territory, with supply lines stretching hundreds of miles. For Hitler, a man obsessed with military genius and historical legacy, this isn't just a military defeat. It's a personal humiliation. It's the destruction of a fundamental belief. The belief that Germans possessed an inherent superiority in mobile warfare. That blitzkrieg was a uniquely German achievement. Patton just proved it wasn't. He proved that speed and audacity aren't German traits. They're commander traits, and he has them in abundance. The briefing continues. Plans are made, defenses are reinforced, but everyone in that room knows the truth. The question isn't whether Patton can be stopped. It's whether he can be slowed down enough to matter. September 11th, 1944. Patton's Third Army runs out of fuel. Not because of German action, not because of enemy resistance. but because his advance has been so fast, so unprecedented, that Allied logistics simply cannot keep up. When Patton's tanks stop 40 miles from the Rhine River, they're not stopped by Wehrmacht, they're stopped by empty fuel tanks. Military historians still debate what might have happened if Patton had received the fuel he needed. Could he have crossed the Rhine in September 1944? Could he have reached the German heartland 8 months earlier than it actually happened? Could the war have ended in 1944 instead of 1945? We'll never know, because by the time fuel supplies resumed in late September, the Germans had reinforced. The west wall defenses were manned, the weather was turning, and the easy advance was over. But for those 32 days in August and early September 1944, Patton's Third Army achieved something that military professionals still study. They moved an entire army over 600 miles through combat, through enemy territory, faster than any army in history had moved before. Let's put those numbers in perspective. From August 1st to September 11th, Third Army advanced over 600 miles. They liberated dozens of French cities: Chartres, Orléans, Troyes, Chalon-sur-Marne, Verdun, Nancy. Each one a major objective. They inflicted 16,000 German casualties, captured 65,000 prisoners, destroyed or captured hundreds of tanks, thousands of vehicles, entire supply depots. And they did it while sustaining only 16,000 casualties of their own. Remarkably low for such aggressive offensive operations. They consumed 2.4 million gallons of fuel, millions of rounds of ammunition, wore out thousands of vehicles, pushed their supply lines to the breaking point and beyond. And they averaged 18.75 miles per day, sustained over 40 days, through combat operations against prepared German defenses. Compare that to other campaigns. The German advance through France in 1940 averaged 15 miles per day. The Soviet advance to Berlin in 1945 averaged 12 miles per day. Patton's Third Army, advancing through prepared defenses with extended supply lines, moved faster than both. This is what Hitler meant when he asked, "Who is this man?" This is what shattered his belief in German military superiority, because Patton proved that the principles Hitler championed, speed and audacity and relentless offensive action, weren't uniquely German. They were universal. And an American general just executed them better than the Wehrmacht ever had. In October 1944, captured German officers were interrogated by Allied intelligence. The interrogation reports make fascinating reading. Again and again, German commanders mentioned Patton. One Panzer commander said, "We were told Americans couldn't sustain offensive operations. We were told they relied too much on supplies and moved too slowly. Then Patton came. He moved faster than we ever did in Poland or France. We had no answer for him." Another officer said, "Patton fights like we did in 1940, with speed, with aggression, with contempt for caution. But he does it better. His logistics are better, his communications are better, his tanks are better. We were fighting our own doctrine, improved." Hitler never publicly spoke Patton's name. In official communications, Third Army was referred to by designation only. But in private conversations, recorded by his stenographers, Hitler had other names for Patton. That maniac, the cowboy general, the barbarian. These weren't insults, they were compliments, the highest compliment Hitler could give. He took Patton seriously, more seriously perhaps than Patton's own superiors did, because Hitler understood what he was facing. Not just a talented general, but a fundamental challenge to everything he believed about warfare. Eisenhower saw Patton as brilliant but reckless. Montgomery saw him as a showboat. Bradley saw him as a necessary problem. But Hitler saw him as something else, as proof that the war was lost. Because if an American general could move that fast, hit that hard, sustain operations that effectively, then what hope did Germany have? The question Hitler asked, "Who is this man?" wasn't really about Patton's identity. Hitler knew who Patton was. He'd read the intelligence reports. He knew Patton's history, his tactics, his reputation. The question was deeper. It was existential. It was, how is this possible? How can an American army, supposedly soft and inexperienced, move faster than the Wehrmacht? How can one general achieve in 32 days what should take 3 months? How can everything we believed about military superiority be wrong? Hitler, because there wasn't one that fit his worldview. Accepting that Patton was simply better would mean accepting that Germans weren't inherently superior, and Hitler couldn't do that. So instead he blamed his commanders, blamed the weather, blamed the logistics, blamed everything except the truth. The truth was simple. Patton understood something fundamental about modern warfare. That speed is survival, that a moving target is harder to hit than a stationary one, that the best defense is to be somewhere the enemy doesn't expect. That audacity, properly applied, is safer than caution. And he had the skill to execute that understanding, the logistical genius to keep his army supplied, the tactical brilliance to exploit every opening, the leadership presence to inspire his troops to do the impossible, and the sheer willpower to keep pushing when everyone else said stop. This is why Patton's race across France matters. Not just as a military achievement, though it was extraordinary, but as a demonstration of what's possible when doctrine meets determination, when genius meets opportunity, when the right commander is in the right place at the right time, with the freedom to do what he does best. Hitler's question, "Who is this man?" is the question of someone watching their assumptions crumble, watching their certainties dissolve, watching an enemy exceed every expectation and standard. It's the question of someone realizing too late that they underestimated their opponent. And in war, that realization is often fatal. By September 1944, Hitler knew he was fighting a two-front war he couldn't win. The Soviets were coming from the east, the Western Allies from the west. Germany's cities were being bombed to rubble. Its army was bleeding out in Russia and France. The war was lost, but Patton's race across France made it personal, because Hitler had built his entire identity on being a military genius, on understanding warfare better than his generals, on championing speed and aggression and the spirit of the offensive. And then an American general came along and did it better, faster, more effectively, with fewer casualties and greater results, and there was nothing Hitler could do about it except watch the maps and ask questions that had no good answers. Who is this man? The question that revealed everything. The question that admitted defeat before the defeat was complete. The question that showed Hitler finally understood what he was facing. Not just an army, not just a general, but a kind of warfare he thought belonged to Germany alone. And watching it turned against him, executed better than he'd ever managed, was perhaps the greatest humiliation of Hitler's military career, greater than Stalingrad, greater than the failure to take Moscow. Because those could be blamed on weather, on logistics, on subordinates. But Patton's race across France? That was just pure operational excellence, and there was no one to blame but the mirror. Because Hitler had set the standard, and Patton exceeded it. That's the story of what Hitler said when he learned about Patton's impossible speeds across France. It's not just about numbers and maps and military operations. It's about the moment when the master realizes the student has surpassed him, when the innovator watches his innovations used against him, when the champion meets someone better. Hitler asked, "Who is this man?" History answered, "The general who proved that your doctrines work, even against you, especially against you." If you found this story as compelling as I did researching it, do me a favor. Subscribe to WWII Elite Glory for more untold stories from the Second World War. Hit the like button, share this with someone who loves military history, and drop a comment. I want to know, do you think Patton could have ended the war in 1944 if he'd received the fuel he needed? Could he have crossed the Rhine 8 months early? Let me know what you think. Thanks for watching. And remember, history isn't just about what happened, it's about why it mattered. Patton's race across France mattered because it changed how we think about mobile warfare. It changed how we think about command, and it changed Hitler's understanding of the war he was fighting. Sometimes one general can change everything. Patton was that general, and Hitler knew it.